So for those of you who are here for the first time, a little introduction might be in order. And I am a ministerial student at Unity Institute in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm going to graduate after 3 years of study in June 7, and will be ordained. So one of my dear friends is from Unity of the Bay, Stan McNeese. Welcome. I am a candidate for the associate minister position here. I am so happy to be back in North Carolina. North Carolina is my home, as Charles Kuralt says. I've lived in North Carolina in the Durham Chapel Hill area since 1986 and left only to go to Kansas City and to study. That will not remain my home. I love North Carolina and the Southeast. So when I stepped off the plane yesterday in Greenville, I smelled the Southeast. There is something about the smell of the earth or the pines or whatever it is. I knew I was home. So I'm happy to be here. I lived in the mountains in Kentucky and Virginia as well, so this is definitely feeling good. And you even ordered the blossoms early for me. Thank you. So I love to dig to find the historical stuff. And of course, I knew this weekend was St. Patrick. I couldn't avoid it. I didn't want to. Patrick, although I grew up Protestant, didn't know much about the saints, I certainly paid attention to Patrick. You might notice the similarity in my name and his. I was supposed to have been born on St. Patrick's Day. Thus, my name is Patricia. I wasn't born on St. Patrick's Day. They had to wait a few more days till the 23rd, but the name stuck. But I really never knew much about Patrick except for shamrocks and snakes. And so I thought, since I was speaking to you with a man like O'Shea as the minister, I knew you must know something about the Irish. And being in the mountains, you do. So I did a little digging, and I found out that shamrocks are known to be St. Patrick's little visual aid to help teach about the Trinity with the 3 parts of the leaf. And that's how he converted the Irish. Well, that story didn't even start until 1720. So some priest decided to put that all together, I suppose. Well, Patrick, you might not realize, lived around 400 CE. So the shamrock thing, as sweet as it is myth. So we set that aside. I want to dig for the historical, the real thing. Then we're told that he drove out the snakes from Ireland. Turns out that naturalists have told us snakes never lived in Ireland. They can't find any fossils of them. They've never lived in Ireland. It's just too cold up there for snakes. Apparently, it's a good metaphor, though, because, snakes in Christian symbolism is negative, and snakes in Gaelic and Celtic symbolism is healing. Of course, it was a healing symbol way back in Moses' time, too. Snakes are just a symbol that has to do with a lot of spiritual stuff. So, mythology. The whole snake thing is mythology. Then there's wearing green. Where did that come from? I guess because Ireland is so green. You see pictures, or if you go there, all you see is green. It's just gorgeous, kind of like the mountains of North Carolina. But when I was a kid, growing up Protestant, growing up Dutch American, in a very Dutch community in northern New Jersey, I had to wear orange And I'm so glad that someone sat in the front row wearing orange today. We had to make sure we put on a spot of orange. And I thought, what was that all about? I don't know. My grandmother just insisted that we wear orange. My grandparents were all immigrants. And yeah, I look Irish, but I don't think I have any Irish blood in me. I'm Dutch. But it turns out the orange had something to do with William of Orange in the Netherlands. It had something to do with being Protestant. Wearing orange declared you as different from the Catholic Irish. So that being said, it's all myth. It's all just put it over here. Where's the real St. Patrick? I found out he wasn't really even declared a saint by the Pope. That didn't happen back in the 5th century. We just decided to name him a saint because he has so much influence in the culture of Christianity. So Patrick was actually born in England. I found something in a classic ethereal library, an online library that's called the Confessions of St. Patrick. He wrote these confessions himself. I thought, wow, finally, the real story. And I thought to myself, I wish Jesus had done that. Don't you wish? If he had just written his own story, we could have saved a whole lot of hassle trying to figure out who Jesus was. A lot of hours in class time at Unity Institute, too. But they were great hours. Patrick wrote this story about himself to explain his ministry. Apparently, some people were trying to convict him of wrongdoing. He received some money from some rich people in Ireland to fund his ministry, and people weren't happy with that. They wanted to find fault with him somehow. So it's funny how when people are effective and successful, other people want to try to pull them down. So Patrick wrote this story, The Confessions of St. Patrick, and he said that when he was a little boy, he did learn something about Christianity. He went to the church in England, and think about this. This is such early Christianity. I don't even know what they taught back then. This is only 60 years after the Council of Nicaea, only 60 years after people actually got together and said, okay, this is what we're going to say Christianity is. And that was down in Rome. So imagine what they knew about Christianity in England in 400. He was born in 390 and died in 421 on March 17. So a short life, and here's what we know about him. When he was 16 years old, he was sold into slavery into Ireland. Now, he didn't spend 2 pages talking about how horrible it was or how, being a victim about being sold into slavery. It was just a fact of life. It just happened. I don't know anything more to say about that. He just didn't make a big judgment on that. It was just what happened. And when he got to Ireland, he was assigned to watch the sheep. And so he sat on the hillside day and night, month after month, year after year, watching sheep, tending to the sheep. And he had as I read in this prayer, I believe he was like a mystic connected to God in nature. I arise today through the strength of heaven, the light of the sun, the splendor of fire, the speed of lightning, the swiftness of the wind. He understood God in nature, and he had hours and hours of nature to witness God. The stability of earth and the firmness of the rock. He knew God from a visceral experience, not from books and priest knowledge. And he found himself praying day and night. He said, I prayed hundreds of hours in the day and hundreds of times in the night. And he said, the Lord watched over me before I even knew him. He said, the Lord opened my mind to an awareness of my unbelief, and I turned with all my heart to the Lord. He said while he was, and you know, we often say in unity, your prayer life will demonstrate in actual measurable ways. There were amazing things that happened with Patrick, with his prayer life. He said he was so protected. He said this is a quote from him. More and more did the love of God and my awe of God and my faith increase, and my spirit was moved so that as I said my prayers, 100 at noonday and 100 in the night, I used to stay out on the forests and the mountains. I would wake up before daylight and pray in the snow and the icy coldness and in the rain, and I used to feel neither ill nor slothfulness, because as I now see, the Spirit was burning in me all the time. He said another thing, he had visions, a mystic. He wrote this. I loved this part. I saw him. He doesn't say who him is, but I suppose it's God, and we're going to respect that because that was the language of his time. I saw him praying with me, and it was as it were inside my body. And I heard him above me, that is, above my inner self. He's trying to describe this feeling of the me and the I am and the me, somehow, way back then. I heard him above me, that is, above my inner self. He was praying powerfully with sighs. In the course of time of this, I was astonished and wondering, and I pondered, who could it be that was praying within me? But at the end of the prayer, it was revealed to me that it was the Spirit. He had a really clear picture of God within and all around him. And through prayer, as I said, he manifested and demonstrated a great deal of protection. I also noticed he demonstrated a great deal of prosperity. He said at one time he got this vision, it's time to go home, time to go back to England. He doesn't explain how he got away from his slaveholders. He just got up and went. And he walked 200 miles to the coastline to go to England. At that time, he met up with some other people who he walked along with, and he must have been talking about his prayer life, and they said, if your God is so great, you know, why don't we don't have any food? We're starving. Sounds like the Israelites in the wilderness, you know, sort of this wilderness experience that Patrick is having right now, you know. Continue to be faithful, and God provides. And sure enough, they were walking down the road, and a herd of swine crossed the road. Go figure. And they take what they need, and they eat their fill, and everyone's satisfied with good food, and they can carry on to their trip on foot to the coast. And they get to the port, and there's a ship. There's a ship waiting, and he asks for passage to England. And they say, no, we didn't plan on you. You can't just come on board. So he says he goes up into a hut to pray. And before he even finishes his prayer, a deckhand runs up the hill and says, we changed our mind. Come on, you can get on board. This guy just manifested whatever he needed whenever it was necessary through prayer, a prayer consciousness, 100 times a day and 100 times at night. It's like the Apostle Paul, pray without ceasing. We often wonder what that means. What does it mean that Patrick prayed 100 times a day? We don't know, but that's what his consciousness was. It was a prayer consciousness. And he was able to manifest protection, prosperity, and just everything that he needed. So he gets to England, and he reunites with his family, and they are delighted that he's there, and they welcome him home, and he settles in, and so now he's a young adult, and he's ready to settle in. He goes to the church, and he learns about Christianity in a new way now that he's got this spirit-filled life, and he gets to find a language with which he can express his spirituality, which is the language of Christianity. And wouldn't you know it, he doesn't get to settle in. He gets this vision again. He gets this vision. He has this dream of a man named Victoricus who comes to him with a pile of letters and hands him one letter. And the letter starts with the voice of the Irish. He said, as if I was reading the beginning of the letter, and it seemed to me at that moment I could hear the voice of those beside the forest, which is near the western sea, and they were crying as if with one voice, "We beg you, holy youth, that you come and walk again with us." And he said, I was stung intensely in my heart so that I could read no more, and I woke up. This was his call to ministry. And it was so simple. It was, come and walk with us again. It was walk with us again. When I read that, I was struck in my heart as well. I thought, wow, that's all it is. It's simply, what are we called to do to minister with each other? What am I called to do as I consider my own ministry? What are you called to do when you consider being a minister to those in your neighborhood? We're called to walk with each other. That's it. It's plain and simple. What is that? It's living this human experience as spiritual beings. It's walking the human path together, one step at a time. When you call someone, a friend, to come and walk with you, what are you expecting? A side-by-side journey, perhaps telling each other a story or what's burdening your heart, and listening and taking turns. You tell your story, I listen to you. I tell my story, you listen to me. We support each other. Perhaps if the path is rugged, we might give each other a hand and pull and help and assist. But it's mostly just walking side by side, heart to heart, experiencing the journey together. And that's what Patrick felt as his call to ministry. And he did that. He went to Ireland and he walked among the people and shared his faith in the language he knew, which was Christianity. And he said he was quite effective. He baptized thousands, he said. This walking together reminds me of Jesus as he walked with people. There's a story about after Jesus' death and resurrection when some men were walking home from Jerusalem to Emmaus. And they were walking along the road, and it's recorded that Jesus just fell into step with them and walked with them. And he said, "What are y'all talking about?" Maybe he didn't say y'all. We really need to have a you plural like they do in the French and Spanish. Y'all is perfect for it. And they told him, "Are you the only one on the planet who doesn't know what just happened?" And Jesus said, "No, tell me about it." And they walked together, and Jesus' ministry there was to walk with. It's what I learned to do in the chaplaincy program when I walked with people in their journeys of crises in the hospital. Just be with, be a presence with. That's what we're called to do as ministers to each other. There's a man named Lance Secretan. He's a public speaker who wrote a book that describes how to be a good leader. And in the book, he talks about an acronym called CASTLE, C-A-S-T-L-E. So there's 6 attributes of a great leader. And this is right now, in 2012, this man is doing the circuit of how to be a good leader. CASTLE, C-A-S-T-L-E. He says C is courage. In order to be a good leader, you need to have courage. He said the A is authenticity. A good leader is authentic. S, service. We're in service to those that we lead. T, trustworthy. Certainly you're not going to have people willing to let you lead if you aren't trustworthy. L, love. Radiate that love of spirit and enjoy those people in love. And E, effectiveness. You can use these things in your own work. If you're a leader in your own work, either in the church or your business, courage, authenticity, service, trustworthy, love, and effectiveness. And the interesting thing when I found that is I thought of Patrick, Saint Patrick. He was courageous. He was authentic. He was humble. He said, I was ignorant and slow of speech. Sounded like Moses again. He said, I was like a rock in the mire, and I was picked up and brushed off and washed off and placed on top of the rock wall to radiate to others. Picked up by spirit and lifted up. Authentic man. In service, you're serving others in your church. I'm so happy to see all the service work you're doing, feeding the children and Habitat. And your board president and your least among them are doing it side by side. You're serving each other and you're serving the community. Trustworthy, goes without saying. Love, Chad is a great example of that. The loving spirit that he is certainly what you enjoy as a leader. And effectiveness. If you're not effective, you're not going to have much of a following. One day, a few weeks ago, I was facilitating a group of the graduates, the people who are about to graduate. There's 15 of us. There were about 10 at the meeting, and I was facilitator just to help us have a good, productive conversation about all the plans around graduation, the hoopla that's going to go on in June. And I felt that one person in the group had done enough talking. And so I was trying to get the group to go back to our agreed upon, go around the circle and everybody says something so it's all equal. But I kind of forgot my communication skills for that moment because she was blurting it out again. And I said, you've said enough. Let's go back to the circle sharing. Well, I wasn't walking with her. I pounced on her. At least that was her perspective. She was so startled and so shaken. I knew tears were coming and she had to leave the room. I immediately knew I had blown it. Everybody in the room, and we'd gone through this journey together at school for 3 years. We knew each other. We understood each other, and they knew me. I can be spontaneous sometimes, and as soon as I said it, I wished I could take it back. I knew I had done her wrong in the sense of startling her and not walking with her. I had pounced on her. I really felt it. None of us can expect ourselves to be perfect 100% of the time, but the authentic part of it is to realize and say, I'm sorry. Simple as that. No buts about it. I blew it. And she left soon after the meeting. She did come back. We finished the meeting. She was okay. But I sent her an email immediately and said, no excuses. I'm not going to say, but you were talking too much. I just said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That wasn't the way I want to conduct myself in a meeting. And she immediately wrote back saying, it's okay. I just think it was your 5th grade teacher voice coming out. And that was a great way for us to understand each other's personalities. And yeah, if you've ever been a teacher, I was for 15 years, you can pounce sometimes. So the point of the story is we do walk together, and we don't always please each other in our walk in this human experience. But when we honor each other and see that we are all spiritual beings, having this human experience. And those little pounces help us to correct and re-navigate and make new choices about how we want to show up in this world. It makes us a richer and stronger person, and in community, it makes us all appreciate each other more. So I just see Patrick truly was a saint, a holy man. And I, as a Protestant, can say that from the depths of my heart. He witnessed to me the power of prayer, demonstrating it with protection and prosperity and having that effectiveness as a humble, authentic leader. So with that, we celebrate St. Patrick in a whole new way and realize over the centuries we've been experimenting with try to understand this human experience and what it means to walk the journey together. Namaste.